Hi everybody, it's Richard and Craig, and welcome to the first feedback video for Run 18 of Mindfulness for Wellbeing and Peak Performance. Craig, our baby turns 18 today.
Well, 18. Well, I think 6 actually, but 18 runs of the course, so it's been great, and so many learners from so many parts of the world are on this course, and it's fantastic to sort of see, although we're all individuals in different places, there's a kind of commonality of our human experience and distractibility and so on, that everybody's realizing that we're all part of the human race, and there's a lot to be discovered in practicing mindfulness.
That's definitely true. It's great to see repeat learners back again. So hi to all of you, and also hi to all of our new learners. And for anyone who might be wondering what this is, every week we're going to make a feedback video just summarising some of the key topics that come up in the discussion forums.
Yeah. So because we get, Liz and Sherelle are looking at, of course, supporting learners throughout the course, and then we take some key themes from the week and see if we can help to sort of deepen the insights and the learning week by week. And so there's some interesting topics that have come up this week, Richard.
Some fantastic topics. And that, as you said before, we're all dealing with universal stuff here. And what mindfulness helps us to do is to look a little more deeply within and start to see some of what's happening, I guess you could say, under the surface. And a lot of our learners starting to notice thoughts and feelings and behaviours that previously perhaps they've just been doing or experiencing unconsciously.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. If, for example, this week we're now more aware of being on automatic pilot than we were before, we're now more aware of what the mind wanders to habitually than we were before, that's a sign of the mindfulness process working, not getting it wrong. And many learners are really noticing that. But some interpret it as not getting it right, can't clear my mind, I'm not able to relax, etc. When actually mindfulness is really like shedding a light on things, and to confuse it with a relaxation exercise when it's actually an exercise in awareness. So it does make us aware of stuff, which is actually the process working.
Definitely. Really interesting question. Is it possible to be mindful when doing things we don't enjoy? I guess, sitting in peak hour traffic or washing the dishes might be common examples of that.
Yeah. Look, I think it's an interesting question, really. And if we look closely when we're doing something that we so-called don't enjoy, to actually be curious of what's going on in the mind. Because there's the physical activity, maybe washing the dishes, but then there's the mental commentary running in the background about how much I hate the dishes. I wish I didn't have to do the dishes. Maybe I should just switch to using paper plates so I can just put them in but wait a sec, there's all the recycling. It's like what's going on with stuff. And it's not the activity in itself. It's the mental commentary that turns the activity into something that's onerous and burdensome. And the thing is to kind of notice and gently unhook the attention from the commentary and to actually engage with the physical, tangible experience of whatever it is that we're doing. And we might discover that it's not quite what we thought. It's different when we do it mindfully, like really mindfully.
Yeah, and that's, I think, what a lot of the learners are noticing, that all the time there's that mental commentary, and it previously was going unnoticed. That once we start practicing mindfulness, we start to realize exactly what you're saying. As we're doing things, there's also that commentary. There are the judgments and evaluations about what we're doing, what we're experiencing in each moment. And that's the mindfulness right there doing its work. So all these things that learners have been noticing, that's really positive progress. Yeah. And it leads into another really interesting thing that was coming up this week, Craig, around the idea that mindfulness can worsen stress and anxiety and depression. There was that article in New Scientist, which was a summary of some research by Foray et al., a brand new study that's come out, talking about adverse events, which is kind of an interesting topic, isn't it?
Yes. And what is really an adverse event and what's not? I think exercise is a really good metaphor here. That, if you're doing exercise, if you think, it's going to be so relaxing and pleasant and so on, exercise is often hard work. Now, the fact that it's hard work doesn't mean that it's not good for us. And there's a difference between feeling tired at the end of having done some exercise or finding it sometimes challenging. That's not an adverse event. That's a sign of putting in effort that comes with the process. The benefits of doing that start to make themselves obvious day by day, week by week. And so when people practice mindfulness and especially when working with mental health problems, as in MBCT and so on, in a carefully supported, scaffolded way, guided by a well-trained mental health professional, it's extremely, extremely safe, because learning to work with the process, etc. But there are occasional, and there are reports of real adverse events. Say, to use the metaphor again of exercise, somebody not very fit and well trained decides, I'm going to run a marathon, and you can actually trigger an adverse event by doing something that's way outside of a person's level of experience and training, but that's actually quite uncommon. The common things are not actually adverse events. It's just becoming aware of and annoyed by.
It's a bit like you've been running along, but you've actually got an ACL tear and you weren't noticing because you're blasting your headphones too loud, and suddenly you start to pay attention. You're like, hang on a sec, that's kind of hurting. What's going on with that? I think that's another, a really good way of looking at it as well, Craig, because I'd actually strongly encourage all of our learners to go and look at the article, the source article by Foray et al. We'll provide a link to that. It's the one that the New Scientist article is talking about. And if you look at that, they list all of the adverse events, right, which include death. One of the studies said that, I don't think mindfulness meditation necessarily led to people to dropping dead meditating. So, again, perhaps that's just something that happened to somebody who was in one of the trials that got reported and is now being talked about as an adverse event. At the other end of that spectrum, people are talking about having kind of, tense muscles and a little bit of back pain, if they're sitting around doing lots of meditation. I guess you'd almost kind of expect that. So we've really got to be sort of clear that when we're talking about adverse events, there's a whole spectrum of things, right? In the middle of that, like you said, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, or MBCT, is a common intervention for preventing depressive relapse. So some of these studies that were reviewed by Foray, they're clinical trials working with people with, high-end kind of, depression and anxiety. And there were people having depressive relapse. There were people feeling suicidal, but I think that's part of just the group of people that were going through that trial. They were likely to do that anyway.
But far less likely than the people who actually weren't getting mindfulness training. So, and it's not like people are doing mindfulness to help them with depressive relapse. Some will have a relapse, but far, far less will have a relapse if they're doing mindfulness than if they're not.
Yeah. One of the things that did jump out at me from the study is that I think if people have PTSD or a trauma history, they do need to be careful with mindfulness training, because it can help them get in touch with things. Again, mindfulness about, being about getting in touch with things under the surface. If we get in touch with things that we're maybe not ready to face, that can cause distress for people. And of course, in situations like that, people might want to ease off on the meditation practice and maybe reach out for some help.
Yes, that's right. And when we're dealing with very complex things, I think we need to be carefully guided through the process, proceed slowly and at a gentle pace that we're able to work with, and be supported by a well-trained professional. But in a kind of a way, like, if you've got a room that's been closed up and you turn on the light, you step into the room, you turn on the light and you realize it's in a bit of disorder, it's like it makes you feel a bit uncomfortable because all of a sudden we see the disorder. The problem wasn't turning on the light. It was, it's actually brought our awareness to something that needs a little bit of care and attention. And I think our mind's a little bit like that. You turn on the light, you see it's kind of a bit of disorder. It needs a bit of
broken things in the corner.
And it kind of makes us feel uncomfortable to kind of turn on the light and say, whoa, there's a little bit of work that needs to go on here. But that's actually providing us the opportunity to notice and then to actually work with it. Just turning out the light and closing the door doesn't fix anything up. And I think confusing the discomfort we see when we open the door and turn on the light with an adverse event No, I'm sorry. It just comes with the territory. So,
I guess
yeah,
stuff's
we
already.
really encourage
I
that.
guess if that stuff's already happening, we might as well notice it, because then we can work with it, right? Whether we do that ourselves or with some external help, we might as well see what's already happening.
And if we don't want to, if we're not ready to do it, and certainly there's no forcing or pushing somebody to go where they're not ready to go. But for those learners who are interested and want to explore, then mindfulness is going to help us to find a way to do that well, and we'll try and guide people through the process gently and just take one step at a time. A number of learners were noticing that the comma is easier than a longer practice, and which is not an uncommon finding.
No, and which is why we've provided meditations of different lengths, and some people really engage well with those short meditations. Some of our learners were saying they were sitting for 10 or 15 minutes already. Probably repeat learners, I would be my guess. But that's the beautiful thing about meditation. It's scalable, so we can commit to sitting for a minute or 15 or 20 minutes. And we provided guided meditations that in the course that will support them doing all of that.
Yeah, that's right. So there's also a question that came up as well about can mindfulness increase our resilience to stress? And I think yes, it certainly can over time if we practice. We become more aware of the default thinking and rumination, etc., that arises that actually undermines our resilience. I think the resilience is actually much more of a natural state. And in some way, a lot of the default thinking that we get caught up in is like kryptonite for Superman or Superwoman kind of thing. It's like the thing that undermines our actual innate resilience, innate capacities and potential. And so when we're less affected by that, then the ability to notice when things happen, to feel comfortable with the discomfort of being challenged, to be able to gently re-engage our attention back on whatever it is that we need to deal with, to sort of be able to bounce back and not to get caught in cycles of rumination, certainly can improve over time.
Yeah, so you're saying that mindfulness is really about putting down the kryptonite, Craig, and
That's right.
being the superhero that we innately are.
That's right. we can draw on our innate superhero. And at the end of this course, for those who get an upgrade, there will be a cape provided. And so everybody who wants to, we will send out a Superman, Superwoman cape that people can.
I don't know if we're promising capes, Craig.
No,
but on that note, yeah, we would encourage all of our learners to upgrade, because that'll get you access to all of these course materials long after the course finishes. So you can always kind of dip back in and reuse some of the meditations or rewatch some of the videos. Yeah. And of course, we offer these courses for free, which is a beautiful thing to be able to do, but nothing's free. So of course, behind the scenes, there are costs. So please consider upgrading for the course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So next week, Craig, we're going to go deeper into this conversation around, or this inquiry around mindfulness and stress, to really start to unpack how that kryptonite works and how do we notice that we're holding it so we can put it down again. We're going to cultivate some qualities like gentleness and curiosity, and also look at how to bring mindfulness into our everyday activities.
Yeah, look forward to being with everybody next week.